which, except for just some parts recently, is most of your district. So we get to see what's going on in your established neighborhoods, and those account for a lot of resales that are going on. We apply the yield factors, sometimes known as generation rates, that estimate new students coming out of the new housing each year. And those kind of get all folded into our forecast each year. So it might be kind of hard to see the numbers on the screen here, but this is our table out of our report that shows your birth data. And if you look at the first column, it says the birth years. It's literally the year these children were born. And then to the right, you see the kindergarten year. So more or less, we're looking at 5 years. That's what we're focusing on. So 5 years later, what's the correlation? What's the trends? Do you see additional births coming in, therefore, in certain years, you see a corresponding increase in the kindergarten that particular year, 5 years later, or is it declining? So that orange line is our base year, and that's the 2017 births, which account for most of your October kindergartners. The other years above it, I like to leave in the table because it gets to show you the historical trends. And you can see going back as far as your school year, 2011-12 is kind of your peak year in your area for births. Unfortunately, it's kind of been dropping off, and you see 802 is your current base number of births, and you can see for the next 4 years that we know, the births are lower. So you're going to see a birth rate a little bit lower, just not necessarily on new development, but just the children being born in your area 5 years previous. And we use those trends up or down to estimate your kindergarten. And then this is a table that shows you just the correlation to your trends in your certain zip codes to your actual kindergarten class size. So there's a little more in that's being born in your particular zip code areas in the yellow, and the burgundy is your kindergarten class. So you should see as one goes up, it also goes up, it goes down. Overall, you average the last 5 years, about 85% is called capture rate of all students in that particular zip code. And then you can see at the end there, those 4 yellow years. Those are those future years of already children, future students in kindergarten being born. And we roll those out into, if they're going to go up or down your future kindergarten class sizes. The other thing in the middle I was showing you was about mobility factors. So these are, which is the majority of your district, more or less your built out communities. What happens when a student moves in, whether it's new housing, it's a resale or whatnot, how they kind of matriculate through the grades. So when you look at that first column, you'll see a lot of grading. That's very common for most districts, especially in California, because kindergarten is not necessarily a required grade. They can be going to private school, held back, daycare, if you will, and you kind of get that little boost in K-1 each year. So overall, at the very bottom, you see your district-wide averages. But some of your regions, let me explain that a little bit too, your 10 elementary school areas, that's our area of focus. So we look in McGrath's area, in Meadows area, what's happening within those regions. And you can see at the bottom, let's start with the district-wide. You get that little boost K-1, and for the most part, you're not losing kids for the next 4 or 5 years. That's the good news. At districts where you can see a completely different trend. But what's also happening is they're kind of moving in around within your district. So they might be in one zone, one area 1 year, and a few years they move on. So you'll see some red numbers, and it looks like they're declining. But if you look at even a 0.97, that means if you have 100 kindergartners 1 year, or I should say, let's say it's first graders, and next year you have 97 second graders. It's not super drastic. You have no numbers on there that's alarming. In fact, these are very impressive. Trust me, and the work that I do, a lot of retention in the district. And again, these are not from new development. This is just in areas where they're established to really bring kids in and they stay. But this does account for resales that are going on within their community over the last 3 or 4 years. Now let's get into the development. I want to back up a little bit before I'm going to start my stuff here and say that I did receive from Dr. Hernandez a report today. It was literally sent to you, I think, today, or sent from me, from a major developer, 5 points. I do most all of my development research I finish it usually December, January, because not just your district, but most districts in California need our forecasts by February. Definitely March is almost too late. So my report's already done. I'm doing board presentations now. So I've finalized my data already almost 2 or 3 months ago. Well, I guess in March, the developer decided to shift around how they're going to be building some of their large projects within the 5 Points projects. And some of the projects, what I'm going to be sharing with you today is maybe not, and I'll point these out in a few moments here, maybe not going to happen in the time frame that I'm showing. It's too late to really update this report, but I will be assisting the administration over the next few weeks and looking at scenarios if those projects don't happen, how does that affect your district. So some of this I'm going to go through over the next few minutes. I'll point out, or in fact on that screen, you can see that we've got the Mission Village projects, which are kind of the active projects now going on in your district. That's still going to continue through, but you've got the other projects like Homestead South to the left, and Legacy Village, which is just north of the Stevenson Ranch area. And when I was doing my research, they were going to happen over the next 7 years. But according to their latest report that just came across just a few weeks ago, that they're now shifting those a little bit later. I'll show that in a moment. The bottom left corner, you see, those are all the active developments that's been happening for the last several years. Most of them have been condominium townhome type units. There was just recently started single-family homes in there as well, and there'll be more. There's not a lot that are of the single families that are they're occupied right now, but there'll be a lot more. Next year I'll get a better feel for what's coming out of those projects. But there's a lot of condominiums that have been built between your area and Saugus' area, that kind of line drawing right there. And they're starting to move more into the single families in the left. So here's a zoomed in of that area. You literally see the line that's drawn between your 2 school districts. And the area on the left is color shaded. Those are the projects in your district. Some of these are literally split between the 2. And it might be kind of hard to see on there, but there's actually student points on there as well. I'm able to track exactly how many are coming overall. Based on the information I received before, there was estimates of about 1,600 of these units being built over the next 7 years. As you can see where they started, they're moving more to the west side and keep going. That's the plan. But as you know, they have a lot of development and grading to do. So it's up to them kind of how they decide if it's just going to naturally keep moving or they're going to build maybe another area that's a little slightly disconnected. So the unit counts might be less based on what the memo has told us, but based on what I was having in my report earlier, I'll show you the forecast and the impact I was expecting in this area. So I'm not expecting you to be able to read all this, but this from our report on page 15 shows our phasing of our units, what we were projecting for your district. So the table shows you all the individual projects, how many units we're expecting to be built. Most of these are going to be built in the next year or 2 that are active. And then they're just going to keep moving, like I said, mostly to the single family. And as you can see each year, there was a certain number of projected units. Some of the units more on the back end, maybe the last 3 years or so, might be being pushed a little more further out later. That's from what I understand. The rates we use to apply to those units is in that box below. We do this student yield factor update about every 2 years. So we did update it this year, and you can see of the single family, which drives most of your new students, it's a 0.345 K6 number. That means for every 100 single family homes, it's roughly going to generate 35 elementary each students. The same thing for the condos, doing the same math. Every 100 condominium would be about 27 elementary kids. And so the apartments are just not, the new apartments generating a lot of kids. They're pretty high rents, the ones that they've been building for the last 5 to 10 years, and they just don't generate any kids. It's dominating, it's the owner-owned units, the condos, townhomes, and single family that really generate the most students. And you can see my note there at the bottom that when I had done this previously 2 years earlier, it was a 0.35 for single family. So it's just a very slight drop. Not as dramatic as I think it was about 5 years earlier. I think 5 or 6 years earlier that single family number was more like 0.5. So it's taken a pretty dramatic hit. This is not just your area, it's the whole valley and most of the development. There's a correlation to when the housing prices go up. Unfortunately, the next generation of students go down. That's kind of what's been happening over the last 3 years. So a little kind of behind the curtain of what we do to generate our forecast is we've broken your district into 135 neighborhoods that we call study areas. And you kind of see on the zoomed in map, kind of the areas, we give them a number letter code. If we split them up, there might be an A or a B. But this particular example focuses on study area 121 in the Meadows boundary. And we show what's in there now under the current 2022 column, and then what we're projecting for that zone or that area over the next 7 years. Those are in the back of our report. If you want to look at your particular neighborhood, see what we're expecting, that's in there. The next level of reporting that we do is by tenant areas. So that one study area and all the ones in that light blue add up together. That makes up Meadows, the tenant area forecast. What's happening in the boundary, not focusing so much on the transferring, but what's happening where the kids are in relation to their boundaries in the schools. So we have a forecast for each one of your zones in our reports on pages 24 through 27, all 10. And then lastly, all everything added up all together makes up our district-wide forecast. So this is on page 18 of our report. The first 3 columns are your historical counts. What was in your district as of those 2019, October year, 2020, 21, and then the current last October, that's the orange column. And then we have our 7 forecasted years. We also pull out your district kids separately at the bottom, and we kind of ramp them up. A lot of times, even for many years when you were declining, there was an effort really made to maybe market out district kids to help boost your enrollment. That's been going on. Plus, now that you have the new developments right across literally the line there, you're also getting kids. I think I counted about 30 students from the Saugus side of the new projects. You have the ability to track that as well. Overall, district-wide, we're showing in our model about 400 net growth, but your district is kind of a tale of 2 school districts, to be honest. It's not exactly split by the freeway, but it kind of is. The school's on the eastern part versus the western part, and you'll see in a moment, we kind of peel away the different layers of the onion, so you can kind of see, right now maybe it doesn't show as much growth, but there's parts of your district. There's 3 obvious ones where we're projecting growth. But you also have areas of decline that are aging out. And you're going to have to make some potential decisions over the years because you've got some things happening on the east that's not happening on the west, or vice versa. So sometimes when you look at it district-wide, it kind of masks some of the trends that have been or are going to be going on within your district. Let's just go through this, again, another slide of essentially the numbers I showed before where we're not showing much growth in the next 3 years or so. And again, we've got areas that are declining, areas that are growing. So they're kind of, when you look at district-wide, it's not very much growth. It depends on where you look. I'm going to show you that in a moment here. And then, frankly, some of the back-end growth you see there, because of what I just saw with the potential plans of those long-term projects, those might even be diminished on there as well. So let's look at the growth or decline geographically. And these are by these study areas I talked about. The gray areas are no growth. Most of that is just areas that can't be built. But you can see the greenish areas, that's where some growth's happening. Now, some of the ones on the right side or the east side of the district, and I show growth of only 5 or 10, so they'll show light green. But on the western side of your freeway, you'll see some growth along the bottom down there too. And the area you were mentioning north of Stevens Ranch Legacy, that's the 119, you see growth up there. That might not be happening, it might be pushed out. And the very top tip, where you see 194 students, that's definitely going to happen. That's those projects that are happening now. It's the bigger, greener area, the 338, that's kind of Homestead and some of the other projects, mission, that might be pushed out a little later. These are units that are going to happen, I want to assure you. Even no matter what the developer says, they are going to happen. It's just, it could be an extra 5 years or 10 years. So we're not saying you don't need school. It just might be pushed out a little later when you might need it. So I don't want you to think that, oh, if the numbers are lower, we don't need a school. You will eventually. It just might not be maybe in the time frame of my report. So these are looking at each of your zones and what's happening in them year to year. It's just kind of a quick way to look at regionally what's happening in the district. And I color-coded them. Obviously, red means loss, green means growth. We only show this year about 2 years of 2 areas of net growth in the next 7 years. Obviously, Oak Hills contains all that development. So even though it might not show as much growth, when we revise these, it still will show growth. Wiley Canyon shows some growth towards the end there as well. Most of your other district is stable or declining. Even Stevens Ranch is still showing signs of decline. The kindergarten class sizes, a lot of these, you look through the report, they're taking hits. When your kindergarten continues to drop, it does not bode well for the rest of the years to come in those areas. So, like I said, hail of different events happening within your district at the same time. This is another quick way to kind of visualize the growth and the decline in your district. The 629, again, maybe not as much because of the push out of some of those units on the last 3 years of our projections, but still, you're going to have growth out in that area. Units and ranch right there continues to drop. Other areas, not so much. Pico's pretty even. But you got, Wiley Canyon area, some potential for growth. But most all the areas, I mentioned on the west, on the east side, are some are stable, but we have some declines going on, and the schools are already small. So we're anticipating them getting, unfortunately, a little bit smaller. And a lot of words on the screen, but just kind of summarizes the things I just mentioned. There are 2 areas of growth, Oak Hills and Wiley Canyon. The rest, not so much. There is also a ramp up, as you know, of the TK program through 2025. That does kind of mask some of the trends that could have even more loss if it wasn't for those games and some of those zones or schools. The Mission Village projects, you got to keep an eye on those. I would advise that, and I'd like to be a part of it, that district staff, administration, meets more regularly, maybe with or forces the developer to meet more regularly, because it's not just your district, it affects other districts in the valley too. It doesn't help any of us to get updates from them in March. We need updates a little earlier, like October, December. So I'm going to push a little harder for that to happen for the next year, unless this is just the time of year they make their ultimate decisions. So things have changed a little bit on their plans. But remember, they're not even saying they're not going to build those units. They're just shifting when they're going to build the units. So maybe some of the recommendations I have here at the bottom about needing a school by 2026, if they shift those projects, it might be put out later. But knock on wood, I mean, I'll be updating this next year. Hopefully they're more up-to-date information, and you'll get to see at that point, okay, have things changed? Are they going back to moving it sooner, or are they keeping those units later, preventing the need for the trigger, if you will, for a new school? And as I mentioned, that Oak Hills could potentially reach over 1,000 residents if a hazard report happens. Realistically, it might only be, there might be 200 or 300 students left. So maybe you could accommodate those kids. Well, like I said, I'm going to do a side study with the administration to see, because you've got some important decisions to make or put off another year. And we want to be able to help you do that before you make commitments. And this happens all the time, you know, where whether it's an economy change, things, you know, change in the way people buy their homes or have people that move into them. All of a sudden you're looking at needing a school to needing a little bit later. So that's it. And I would open up if you have any questions or issues or concerns. Any questions?
I was just curious how you collect your data for the existing homes and the attrition.
For the, well, we have, well, like I said, we know what's there for existing homes. We receive parcel data from every county. So every year we're getting a new snapshot of your new existing homes each year. So usually we get that every September, October. And remember, we get your student data every year too. So we typically drop out the older year, if you will, and bring in the new year. So we're refreshing the numbers. We're a little more past the pandemic years now. So we're kind of back. We were very, I don't know, nebulous or, you know, murky, cloudy for a few years there. But I think we're back on track and we're getting you more up to date on the information. But again, the parcel data we get, you know, where all your homes are, what's been built. The student data we get directly from the district. And again, the development we get directly from the developers or the site visits every year.
And do you gather information on home sales? For example, you know, a community such as Stevenson Ranch, 20 years or more, probably had young kids and they're still living there. Like how many are moving out and things.
Yeah, they're inherently in the mobility factors that we share with you. But yeah, I went back and showed our reports from 20 years ago. It is amazing the changes in Stevenson Ranch in particular. How that school held, they held up 1,000 kids at one time. And now it's approaching about half that. What's happening again, it's not just your district, it's happening in lots of places, especially in California, is you're just not getting that new wave or the old wave coming back. Like back when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, parents or families moved more often. You know, maybe 2 or 3 times through your school years. It's not happening that much anymore. People are staying in their homes. They can't afford to move or relocate. And then the ones that do, with those mobility factors I showed, they're coming in with older kids, less kids, no kids. And so the mobility factors are what's happening in those resales. So the good news is you're holding on to your kids. You're just not getting, like maybe you did years ago, a whole bunch of waves of people coming in from the house. You would have seen, if I pulled up a report 10 years ago, a lot more of those green cells across the board. You're just essentially maintaining, which is still good, but you're just not gaining those, that turnover that used to happen all the time.
And as far as the new development, do you know any percentages in terms of like older adults buying those properties and afford it more so than the younger families?
I don't have that particular. In the back of our report, we do have some information regarding that. If you look at the percentages of, and it will show this, that an aging population, you know, less younger kids, more older people, if you will. Like I said, we use the mobility factors are usually pretty much right on what's going on in your community. You're looking at your snapshots each year, and think about it, if you move out, those students are not in that study. Whoever moves into that home, it shows up the next year. So if you're gaining kids from the resale, it's going to show up there, and that's where the green would come in, where you're getting a higher percentage each year of people moving in with children. It's just not happening. There's just staying put, or you're getting very similar sized families moving in than was there before.
And in the new developments like Platform, is it more aging population or young families?
It's a little too soon to tell because I like to have a certain number of units in my sample size to look at that. I mentioned those generation rates or yield factors. It's just too small just to focus just on that area. I think next year I'll be able to get you maybe some very specific information for that community. But usually I like to have 500 to 1,000 units to really be able to see a realistic example. If you make the sample size too small, it'll skew it. But just somewhat anecdotally and from what I can tell, I think you're just not getting as many kids because the driver for new kids is single-family homes. It just happens across the board. They are very smart, these developers. You know, they've been planning this development for 25 years. And I don't even know how many times they reshaped. Probably just what Mission Village was supposed to look like, you know, way back when. They're smart. They know that if this was 15 years ago, before the boom, the blast, I should say, those were the most developed single-family homes they're building. They're building condominiums, townhomes. Why? Because that's what people can afford, you know? And that's what they're starting with. They're testing the market. There's a lot of other developers and maps, not even in your district, that have been dormant or frankly dead for decades, that are kind of watching what's happening in that area. There's also just outside your area, Williams Ranch, in the Cascade area. Different type of community, a little more high end. But again, developers are looking at these. They check the markets, and I think maybe that's why they're shifting some of the stuff around. They're just trying to stay ahead of what the desire is of the homebuyers are. It doesn't help that they're raising, they have higher mortgage rates too, which raises the cost of what people are paying every month. And these apartments, why somebody more apartments to see what they're renting the units for? They're not conducive to what's an apartment like you're going to have children.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So you have a lot of data, you said like 15 years worth of data. How accurate are your numbers when you go back and compare it?
Very good question. First, let me say, anytime we do a forecast, whether it's 5, 7, 10 years, I always tell my clients the first 3 years are going to be probably the most accurate. And as you go further out, it's more fuzzy, whether it's development happens, doesn't happen, or economy changes. But what we aim for, and I think we've hit the mark many times, is to be within 1 to 2%. And I know the last few years we were. I think we estimated.
Was there anything related to that? Maybe people leaving the state, or that's just in your mobility factor?
It's kind of inherently in the numbers, yeah. It's, you can look at it different angles. If you look at my projection I did for 2019, I wasn't forecasting COVID. So in some ways, that goes in the garbage can. But that's why each year, whether it's COVID, whether it's a change in development, you have to update it every year. It's so critical for your district to do this annually. I have districts that wait 2 to 5 years before they do this. And they wind up frankly shooting themselves in the foot because there's a lot of planning that goes with it, opening a school. Maybe it's looking out time to get rid of those portables. Or maybe it's let's redesign that school. A lot of things go into what we do, and having to get this out, like I said, by January, February, a lot of districts do their financials based off of that, staffing, and all that stuff. So we can't really go and update it all the time. I will make a little side exception because of what we just received today. And then maybe Dr. Hernandez or Dr. Winger, someone could share with you kind of what we come up with. Because I don't want a whole other year to go by before you kind of see what kind of impact that would be.
And just my last question, I think you may have touched on it. Do you factor in like mortgage rates, like when they go up, like obviously on the price of those properties, the demand may go down, and you might have to remember at least for that.
Right. Well, we don't go in and purposely go in and say I'm going to lower these numbers because of this or that. We kind of let the numbers tell the story. Be updating those yield factors every other year. There's some districts that wait 5, 10 years to update theirs. I think every other year is pretty right on for you. That will capture, like if you went back and looked, and I could provide a list of what they were each time I did it, you're going to see them drop, as I mentioned earlier. And that's a reflection of the type of families and the number of children are moving into your valley, I should say. The thing is, in the past, I had to use, and even now, valley-wide numbers for your district. Because if you think about it, until the last year or two, you had virtually no new development for probably 10 years. So I can't take that exact sample size of recent units and give you specific Newhall or numbers. I'm hoping, as I mentioned earlier, that maybe next year I can get a more focused Newhall number because you're going to have a good sample size from those new units, from the developer, from Valencia. And inherently in those numbers, mobility, remember we drop out our oldest of the 4 years, bring in the new, it gets a refresh, and then the numbers. So we don't go in purposely. I will say this, let me back up a bit here. When we were in the COVID year or years, we did go and kind of tinker with our forecast a little bit, especially the birth rates, because what I showed you earlier, when you look at what was there 5 years earlier, right, and then they're going to show up in their kindergartens, a lot of them happening. There was an artificial event that people were holding back those kids that should have shown up. So what we did then was, as I said earlier, when you drop into kindergarten, inevitably you're going to show this as a decline. So we did, the year during and after the COVID years, we did adjust our birth rates thinking there was going to be a recoup of those kindergartners or becoming first graders next years. But enough time has passed now that we don't really make the adjustments. But we know for that 1 year or two it's going to be kind of a blip. And so a lot of districts, unfortunately, it's kind of like the new normal. Some just never got that coming back. Maybe they moved out. But we don't want to go and just, it's that art versus the science of what we do. I was willing to make the changes then. Right now, I kind of let the numbers kind of do the talking.
My question is more for Dr. Hernandez. Thank you so much. I noticed on page 4 of the student population forecast document and all that, it mentions us addressing the possibility of closing a school day. And I just wanted to, clarify if that's something that we foresee considering.
Of course, when you close a school, you consider closing a school, there's a lot of things that would have to happen. Our schools are community schools. They cater to our families that live in the community. We, as a school district and the board, have to decide what is our threshold. How far can we keep the school moving and supporting it with the number of students? Right now, at this point, I think what we would see is closing school in the next couple of years. Because we do believe in the community schools, and we do believe that we have to children to belong to their home schools, and that's really important to us. Now, of course, if we saw it dropping to a point where we could no longer afford to upkeep the school, that's what we consider. But it takes a lot of planning, it takes a lot of time, and community involvement, which is really critical. And just to explain the answer would be difficult, but just know that if it ever were to happen, it would be something that would come to the community with plenty of time and would be really deep consideration and how it would affect the community.
Can I add one little thing to that as well, too? Is that with the tools that we have, with running those study area forecasts, all those areas, we also can help the district kind of do whatever you want to call it, scenarios. And there's some districts I'm helping right now that are not closing all days of schools. They're just adjusting the boundaries. But let's say one school has a lot of kids in one area and one has that. Sometimes you're making some of the shifting of those study areas around. I'm not saying that will give you, again, you have to look at your thresholds for your schools. But that might be something you could consider because it's been a while since you made any boundary adjustments. Obviously, you open a new school, you have to create a new boundary. But you might want to explore as an exercise on these sides, just adjust the boundaries to see if maybe some more right balance the schools. Maybe not to fit their capacities, but maybe to make them more equally balanced amongst each other.
And also for the buses. Because we're busing right now because we have the one little offset near Newhall that goes all the way over to Riley with those 30 buses. If we are able to appropriately bound it, we might be able to not have to do nothing on that, which is something we had to look at. But we were beginning to discuss all of that years ago, and then, lockdown happened. What's the point? We're homeschooling. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you very much. All right. So, there's no more questions. I move to accept the fall 2022 student population projection report from Data Demographics. Second. We have a first and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And chair votes aye, passes 4-0. Thank you very much. Staff reports administrative services. Consideration of approving the Newhall School District Transportation Services Plan for 2022, 2023, and 2023-2024.
I just want to remind the board that we did bring that transportation plan at the last meeting for any changes or any type of modifications. And then at this time, I do want to ask if you have any public comments. Okay.
Does the board have any comments or concerns about the transportation plan? Seeing that there's none, I move to approve the Newhall School District Transportation Services Plan for 2022-2023 and 2023-2024. Yeah.
I'll second that.
All right. We have a first and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And chair votes aye, passes 4-0. Let's see. Administrative Services consideration of approving Resolution 2022/23-18 certificate of signatures for a period of March 29th, 2023 through December 12th, 2023.
Move to approve.
Second.
Alright. We have first and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Alright. Chair votes aye, passes 4-0. Staff reports curriculum and instructional services. Consideration of approving project to inspire memorandum of understanding with California Association of Bilingual Education.
Good evening, Governing Board, Dr. Hernandez, Ms. Montaner, members of the audience. Project to Inspire is a parent education program brought to us by the California Association of Bilingual Educators. Its 12 modules are designed to support the development of parent leadership in our emerging bilingual community through building confidence, capability, recognition, and connections. This is a valuable way our district can support parents as they support our students in school success, social and emotional well-being, and contribute to school and district leadership saving councils. Thank you for considering.
Does the board have any questions on this item? Seeing that there's none, I entertain a motion to approve the project to inspire memorandum of understanding with California Association of Bilingual Education. Move.
Second.
So we have first and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Passes. Chair votes aye. Passes 4-0. Human Resources consideration of approving a return to work partners contract.
So this contract is to work with this company, and their expertise is in return to work processes such as interactive accommodation meetings. And although Mr. Hunt and I are able to have interactive accommodation meetings at times, there are other times when additional circumstances come into play and we feel we need to bring in someone with this is their area of expertise. So this organization excuse me, is known for their expertise. Sorry.
I just want to add that it would just be as an as needed basis. So the contract is not just open-ended, but it's just as needed, and be for those cases that will be do need a consultant expert to come in and support.
That was a question I had because I noticed there was no like upward limit. Normally we're like up to 7,500 something like that. To see the hourly rate. So where's our guesstimate?
So I would say I would assume once a year we would use this. This would not be.
And for how many hours on that one time?
Usually it would be maybe an hour of prep, an hour and a half to 2 hours of the actual meeting, maybe. Usually interactive accommodation meetings are not very long. We have, it's rare that we would need to utilize the service, but we would, we feel it's important to have it when needed.
Better to have it now.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm thinking $500,000 on the year. How many? Yeah. It's 135 cents, right? So.
$135 per hour.
Yeah.
So that's estimating.
75 per hour.
Yeah, we're estimating that if we were to use them, it would be in the lower thousands, $1,000, $2,000 at the most that we would see in a year. And that's it's as needed, only as needed, and that's only those really circumstances where we would need to bring in that expertise to support the employee and to support the district.
Yeah, and I noticed the same thing. There was no, not to exceed a certain amount. It's kind of like a blanket to have a piece. But does our board have any further questions?
Is this only for contracted employees?
No. So this would be for all of our employees when necessary. So for example, what this looks like, we have an employee who has a medical condition or a health concern, and they bring us a doctor's note that is really highly complex, and we feel that it is beyond our scope, so that's when we would bring in this expert, and it would help facilitate that interactive accommodation meeting. Which is the legal process that we are mandated to, or obligated to engage in with our employees.
Any other questions?
I move to approve the contract for return to us.
Okay. All right, we have a first and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And chair votes aye, passes 4-0. Agenda items for upcoming meetings or governing board? Of the governing board? Any items? No? All right. Well, we want to have a close, so I adjourn the meeting at 8:05. I know, right?
Goodbye.